Oh yes, hello, welcome to another ravishing edition of Readings from Urban Dictionary. I'm here, I'm very excited to be here. Cohort, are you there?
Oh yes, I'm here, sir.
Oh, I believe this will be our 8th installment of this little journey that we're doing now. So, can you believe we've actually done 8 separate entries, of course?
Well, I really can't believe that these young gentlemen across the pond there really kept us on for 8.
I know, it almost feels like they're the ones that are the suckers, of course. So here we are, of course, we're doing a special edition by request from the owner-operators of this lovely station. I believe the one name is, Gijustin, of course, and I have some homeless man from Portland named Egan or something, and he's some guy that pretends that he's important or something of that nature. So here we are, we're going to be doing a geographical, locational episode here as we pull inserts and words that are specialized from the very regions that they are from, of course. So you know, what locations does that include? So we will be getting to that, Cohort. Cohort, before we begin here, just tell me a little bit, is there anything special that your region, your neck of the woods is known for?
Well, if you're referring to Oxford, I believe.
Yes, of course. I believe you are from lovely Oxford.
Well, Oxford really has. Well, I mean, mainly Oxford has, you know, the college. That's what most people like to remember about it. But a lot of people don't remember the Oxford hand job, which actually originated in the college. It's where you actually jerk off somebody. Touching the penis via a book instead of your hand, as to avoid getting your hands all damaged and sticky for further book reading in college.
Oh, so you're telling me that you can study while giving someone a proper wank? Is that what you're telling me?
If you're actually really experienced in the art, then yes. You need to make sure to watch out for the finish, though. Make sure your lover finishes outside the book, not inside, because they're awfully particular about returns in that library.
Yes, of course. Sticky pages is no fun. Plus, one would have to watch the old edges of the pages. You wouldn't want to have a male genitalia all cut up with paper cuts, of course. That would be absolutely just that would be monstrous. That would be horrible, of course. So yes, that little bit of Oxford education there. So of course, here we are. We're going to do our first entry here, and keep in mind we're doing 3 separate entries tonight, of course, for the 3 owner-operators of this lovely channel that we have been invited to partake in. So as we move forward here, our first entry tonight is called the Oregon Slapjack, of course. So this originated in the lovely state of Oregon. I believe it's in the old Pacific Northwest, just north of California, I believe. Is that right, Cohort? Is my location there proper?
Well, I've always been horrible with the geographical locations of America, but I believe you're around about in the same area.
I think so, yes. I might be in the proper neck of the woods. So an Oregon slapjack is when you're receiving fellatio and you whip your dick out and start slapping your partner in the face with it as fast as possible, making it sound like you're flipping flapjacks in an old skillet, of course. So as used in a sentence, bro, my girlfriend was giving me a blowy last night, and I just started doing the Oregon slapjack on her for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So there we are. I'm not exactly sure what there is to be gained from such a move. We actually went to Oregon State University. We took a little holiday over there, and we interviewed some of the local students at the university establishment there, and the most common word was, of course, the Oregon slapjack, which the older gentlemen like us, we're not exactly sure what the young'uns of today are up to, but if whipping out your male genitalia during fellatio and just starting to do a gentleman's duel, slapping her with your little glove, of course, as you may call it, you know, as you can tell, I'm just dumbfounded. I don't know why one would do this, why one would choose a dick slap in the face over fellatio. Just puzzles me, Cohort. I'm not quite sure why they would do that.
Well, like I always like to say, it's always nice to keep a little bit of humor in the bedroom, and I believe that's the only reason that I personally see that to be in place. Just if she's okay with it, then it's just a little bit of humor, a little slap without the tickle.
Yes, of course, and we all do love flapjacks. Don't get me wrong. I do love pancakes. And flapjacks as we call them here in the UK. They're absolutely delicious, but there's if you want to hear the sound of a flapjack being flipped over on a skillet, perhaps you should make your own round of flapjacks instead of slapping your loved one in the face with your genitalia, especially when she's doing you such a solid, giving you top-notch fellatio. So I don't quite understand that one, but we will take that as an entry into the Urban Dictionary. Perhaps maybe the next generation of gentlemen that take our place one day, maybe they will be all organ slapjacking their spouses and loved ones across the face with ravishing results. Cohort, what do you think?
Well, maybe the fellatio wasn't as good as he was hoping for. Maybe he was just trying to teach her a small lesson to do better.
Of course, maybe it's a way to, almost how a jockey rides his horse, and when the horse isn't going fast enough, perhaps he has that little jockey stick that he slaps the horse with to encourage. Yes, of course, to encourage better performance from the horse. So perhaps that is what the organ slapjack is, somewhat of a simulation of. Perhaps it's, you're not doing your job well enough, so let me just slap you across the face a couple of times. Let's sound it like a flapjack, and perhaps maybe you will give better fellatio after that. But that seems like an awful barbaric way of encouraging your partner to perform better fellatio. So with that entry, we'll now move on to the next entry. Now, this word comes wayward of the old, I believe it's the old Midwest region, of course. Our next stop and visit in our tour around the old geographical locations here. This one's called the Kenucky Barn Burner, of course.
Kentucky.
Yes, the state.
One of my favorite. That is one of my favorite states in America as well. Beautiful scenery.
Yes, and of course, Kentucky has rich history, very deep, and we actually went to the state capital, of course, to find out this lovely information that we're about to share with you, of course. So we're very excited about that. So there was a man, I believe, he started a chain of restaurants around the old United States, and possibly outside of the United States by now, but his name was Colonel Holland Sanders, of course. So here's a proper picture of, that's not Holland Sanders, that's unfortunately the wrong person, I believe, yes. So here we are, yes, there we are. Sorry about that. Gent like me, perhaps sometimes we click the wrong buttons. We don't quite understand the technology of today, so as we try to keep up with the times, as they say, and we try to evolve and adapt to the most efficient way to educate you all, I might have a little slip-up from time to time. It just does happen. But yes, anyway, do not let my mishap there jeopardize your education for tonight. Let me show you to this proper picture here of Colonel Holland Sanders. Of course, you can tell he was quite the gentleman. You can just tell by his get-up. He was a man that was dedicated to being the most proper gentleman possible. So already we tip our hat to Colonel Holland Sanders, of course. So do you know anything of the history of Holland Sanders yourself, cohort?
Well, not too much, actually. The only thing that I do know is he was not actually a colonel in the army. That was just something that was said. I'm not too sure why they actually started calling him the colonel.
Oh, yes, we'll have to look up that history on our own time here, of course. But Colonel Holland Sanders, of course, the reason we have him up there is he is responsible. He actually invented this term that has gone into the Urban Dictionary called the Kenucky Barn Burner. So anyway, as we continue on, so Holland Sanders, of course, is, as we know, he was a proper gentleman. So, but he comes from Kentucky. It's a little bit different. The culture is a little different there, a little rougher around the edges. But he was a gentleman nonetheless. So the Kenucky Barn Burner. One night, Mr. Holland Sanders, of course, this is before his restaurant times of Kentucky Fried Chicken, I believe it's called. He was just trying to live his life as efficiently as possible in finding ways to multitask and bring out the most in his life. So the Kenucky Barn Burner was one night invented. Holland Sanders was having sex with a lovely woman from Kentucky. I believe he was doing the old doggy style, or canine position as they call it, of course. Anyway, he had a wad of chewing tobacco in his mouth that night, and he had a spit cup on her lower back. Can you believe that, cohort? What a barbaric thing. Yes, of course.
Of course.
So he had a spit cup on the lower back, so he's just, doing her way, canine style, of course, and then he would spit and hit it into the cup. Amazing aim, of course. But anyway, apparently the woman said something that was it flew a little south with Mr. Sanders, of course. He wasn't quite he wasn't exactly excited to hear whatever words were spoken. We tried to get a direct quote as much as possible, but we were unable. Nobody really knew what happened behind closed doors, and of course, at this time, both parties are well past, and their time on this earth has been spent, so we could not get a direct quote from them. But anyway, she said something that Mr. Sanders was not quite fond of. So at that point, he took his male genitalia out, and he dipped it in the spit cup of the chewing tobacco, and then he proceeded, cohort, to stick his male genitalia up her rectum as it was soaked with chewing tobacco spit. Can you believe that?
Oh, good lord!
Oh,
the amount of burning that must have caused.
Oh, yes, I believe that is why it is called the Kenucky Barn Burner, as used in a proper sentence. My date gave me this nasty black eye after her Kenucky Barn Burner last night. Oh, my.
Ow!
Oh,
that just seems so painful.
Oh, yes, of course. So the Kenucky Barn Burner now, and of course, Mr. Colonel Holland Sanders, of course. So after he's done this, perhaps he maybe feels a little bit of burning sensation himself. So we've had this CGI model rectified to perhaps see what Mr. Sanders' face may look like after he has performed a proper Kenucky Barn Burner. You may get a little something like that, of course. So Mr. Sanders, of course, may have been in a bit of pain himself, cohort. Can you believe that?
Oh my god, that's just barbaric.
It is quite frightening, of course. So I don't know where the owner-operators of these channels come from, but let me tell you something. I would know part of their geographical location at this point. We're talking about people sticking chewing tobacco spit-covered male genitalias and rectums, and of course the other one was slapping your lovely bird in the face with your male genitalia, encouraging better performance. It just seems barbaric across multiple levels. So anyway, we have one more location to visit, of course. I believe this one comes from just a little north of Kentucky, the state of Indiana, of course.
The corn huskers up there.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe Indiana will be the redemption here for the current locations, and maybe we can get a little more positive, something a little more worthwhile of the gentleman's attitude and way, as we hope that you so far are taking notes and enjoying your education tonight. So as we move forward here, we're going to begin to look at what the state of Indiana has to offer. This one is called the Indiana Jones Boulder, and this one actually comes way out of that picture I showed you earlier by accident, of course. That is the classic Indiana Jones actor. That's Harrison Ford in character there. Quite the handsome man. Ladies, please do not get all hot and bothered just yet, because we have not educated you here. But I know...
Oh God, they're going to have to mop up the floors tonight.
Oh, yes, of course. I believe some ladies are waving themselves off over there as a young Harrison Ford might make them just get a little goosebumpy there. But anyway, of course, so this is the picture that popped up earlier, of course. I do apologize for my slip-up again. But as we move forward, the Indiana Jones Boulder is an iconic moment in the film. Do you perhaps remember, I believe he was in a temple of some sort, and there was a large boulder rolling towards Mr. Jones, and then he actually had to get out of the way. Do you remember that, cohort?
Yes, that temple was just full of just anarchy and doom, I believe.
Yes, of course. So this was actually a reference to that scene particularly. So anyway, how does it apply, though, in the Urban Dictionary format? So the Indiana Jones Boulder is when a large man or woman rolls on top of you while he or she is wearing a fedora. So if you take a close look at Mr. Jones there, of course, he's wearing an old school fedora, of course. So have you seen a fedora of that style, cohort, in any recent years?
Recently, I think there's been a surge in the fedora industry, I believe, and they've been becoming quite popular in certain cliques around mainly America.
So of course, here we are. We have two examples of this. Actually, it's one example, but two different sentences to explain the Indiana Jones Boulder. And as used in a sentence as follows, we have, "Man, did you see Chris? He paid that whore to Indiana Jones Boulder him last night." And then person B responds, "I did. She broke his nose." So if you need a little visual reference of perhaps what what it would take for a person to pull off a proper Indiana Jones. What would it take for someone to look like? If you happen to have this moment where you yourself want to be Indiana Jones Boulder, go up for the ladies out there. We'll go ahead and use you as a reference, of course. So we're going to show you here, image 2, that gentleman right there. That gentleman right there wearing that fedora.
Oh, good lord.
Would pass perfectly for an Indiana Jones Boulder. So, of course, there you are, visual reference. Exhibit A, Mr. Jones, in his prime, of course, and then person B, of course, slightly overweight, large man, with a fedora. And if he happens to roll on top of you, he has performed a classic Indiana Jones Boulder. Cohort, do you have anything to add here?
Well, I believe if you look close enough into the movie itself, it's one of my favorite movies, that man actually was the boulder from the movie. They just put him up in a little bit of paint and made him roll into the bowl. And I believe he would be the prime example of an Indiana Jones boulder itself. He may have been, who knows, the originator.
Oh gosh, quite the stunt double, of course. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we bring an end to this episode. We do appreciate it. Good night.
Good night.